Hey everyone, welcome to our podcast. This is the first of series of episodes that the Global Desi is going to bring for you, the Global Desi podcast. The whole idea is to present our perspective as people who have left India, taken citizenship of countries outside India, and how our experience was, how our journey was, and how our connection is with the country that we are citizens of now and how it connects back to the country of our origin. I'm Jijo George, and my co-host is Vivian. He's from UK. I'm from Australia. So over to you, Vivian.
Yeah, hi Jijo. I think it's been a while in the making, hasn't it? But yeah, finally here we are, the first episode of the Global Daisies. I've been outside of India for almost 17 years now, and for every time that I return back home or I speak to my friends back home, or even elsewhere, I think I keep getting asked a common theme of questions. So basically about my experiences, about my challenges, what made me come to land outside of India, etc. So I thought this would be a good platform where we can share our experiences so that the people who are in a similar phase to where I was 15 years ago or 17 years ago could make a more informed decision. And otherwise, I think there's going to be lots of snippets and challenges and fun in this as well, which people can just take away.
True. So how was your journey from India to UK?
Well, there were a number of pit stops between India and the UK, so I didn't just directly come from the India to the UK. As I've mentioned previously in our past conversations, I've spent most of my life so far in India. I've done all my education in the south of India, so I grew up in Bangalore. I did my university in Bangalore before I went to Roorkee for my master's. And I came back to Bangalore to complete my education, did my PhD there. And I even started working in Bangalore. So I've had about 8 years of work experience in Bangalore. Not to say that I haven't worked in India at all. And whilst I was working in Bangalore, I traveled quite a few places in India and working in other places in India as well. One of the things that really shook me when I was a young engineer working in India was when my organization applied to bid for a very large road development project in India. And one of the criteria for the team leaders of the project was to have 15 years of international experience, of which 5 years should have been in certain named countries. Now, that was shocking for a young engineer aspiring to be a team leader one day, to not be able to be a team leader in the country that I've done most of my education in, done most of my working in so far. So I think that was one of the reasons which prompted me to look for opportunities abroad, initially with a view of gaining the experience and going back to India. But having said that, I still haven't completed the so-called requirements of going back to India in order to become a team leader. So which is why I'm still here.
So was the project an Indian project or was it an international project being run in India?
It was a World Bank funded project. So as you know, most of the road development projects and the major infrastructure projects, they have some form of external funding, be it from various sources, various external sources, various banks, etc. And they all have stipulations as far as quality and specifications are concerned, as well as for personnel, key personnel at least. So I think this could have been an isolated case where it was a World Bank project where it had a requirement for international experience. But I have seen other projects where they were funded mainly from the government of India as well, which still have quite strenuous requirements.
So it was a World Bank funded project, but it was an Indian company or the government who was driving it, is it?
Oh yes, absolutely. So yeah,
and even then you required an external. Even then you required an external experience. Yeah, that's strange, right? I mean, that itself is a side of things that not many people know, considering that even to be recognized within India, you need to have international experience. And then people complain that why do you need to leave the country for growth? Because even to grow within the country, you have to go outside the country, which is quite disappointing. Yeah, that's a strange one.
This is my experience in my field as a civil engineer. I mean, others might have different experiences. They may have different motivations as well. But yeah, this is my story.
Like my experience, so I was basically an IT engineer back in the day. I started off with one of the top IT companies in India. So the whole idea was back then when I joined, that was about 16 years back when I joined the workforce. Back then, the whole idea was these IT companies were your gateway to an international experience. And for the longest time, because of the pop culture that I had been consuming, shows like Friends, Big Bang Theory, all the Marvel stuff, and the Archie's comics, there was this whole aura of visiting US, which greatly drove me to, I want to get into an IT company. I want to go and pursue my further career goals in an international location, preferably US. And that's what I did. And something that I noticed back in 2008 was almost every IT guy who was my peer or my senior, their end goal was to reach US or an international location. Because one of the biggest reason was obviously that the pay scale difference within India and internationally is so huge. You're almost earning 10 times what you're earning in India, and you're also living an experience which not many Indians would be able to have. Because from the statistics that I've read, I guess the percentage of Indians who actually get an opportunity to work or even go outside India is really minuscule. So when I got my first opportunity to get to US, I was of the whole idea that yes, I'll experience it and I'll come back. So I moved to US in around 2013. But once I started living there, it was so different, so comfortable, and somehow what you're earning was valued so much more, and people were actually valued so much more as compared to an IT guy in India, that my whole concept of continuing to live to India shifted a lot. So much so that when my visa was about to get over, I was trying to figure out how to stay in US or find out some other country that I can move to, one of the developed countries. So I had an option between Canada and Australia. So Canada being extremely cold, my wife wasn't too keen. So we tried Australia, we got through, and that was like 5-6 years back. And I came here on a permanent residency visa because of the skills that I had. And now I'm a citizen 5 years later. And obviously I'm no longer an Indian citizen because we don't get the dual citizenship thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's a little bit of a shame, isn't it? I mean, if you had been given an option of holding on to your Indian citizenship and holding dual nationalities like some other countries allow, what would you have chosen?
So are you saying that would I have continued having the Indian citizenship as well as the Australian citizenship?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't see a reason why I would let go of the Indian citizenship if there are no other hoops and jumps to actually go through. So if it's a very complicated process in which I have to retain 2 citizenships, then probably I would have to think about it. But if it is as simple as just getting the Australian citizenship and holding 2 passports, why would I leave Indian citizenship? I mean, there's no reason to.
No, that's the exact thing, isn't it? No, that's exactly the reason that I had to sort of give it up. I mean, I'm still an overseas citizen of India. So India has that provision where you can get a card which says you're an overseas citizen of India. You have most of the rights of the people who live in India, except that you cannot contest elections or you cannot vote or probably not have a government position as well, I think. But having said that, that was a point where we had to make a decision that was of huge emotional strife, shall we say, in the Vivian household here. Because as much as we wanted the freedom to have a strong passport in order to travel, etc., we didn't really want to give up our Indian nationality because that is my identity, that's who I am. But there wasn't an option to retain both. And that's a question which keeps coming up quite often when I'm speaking to peers back home or to students back home as well, as to why would you not retain your nationality while taking up another nationality. Unfortunately, the answer to that is the Indian government doesn't have a provision where you can hold on to dual nationalities.
Yeah, see, my perspective is slightly different. Uh, so leaving Indian citizenship was not really an emotional roller coaster or something for me, because I've always believed that we are citizens of Earth in the sense that the whole world is where you belong to. And my perspective is my citizenship of India was by chance because I was born to an Indian
Yeah.
family. Me choosing Australian citizenship is a choice that I made. So I chose to be Australian because I saw the opportunities that Australia had and the respect that my work got in this country was way, way more. So it could have got to do with the experience that I have had in India, where people don't value the people who work there, right? Like the senior managers wouldn't value you as much and wouldn't even consider you as a peer. Their whole thing would be, yeah, so if one guy goes, there are hundreds who are standing in line to replace him, right? So for example, here, what I have noticed is you are valued a bit more because the competition is less. Because our job is valued for the experience that we have, unlike India. That was the professional side of things. The other thing that I really noticed is here when I pay taxes, I can see that money being utilized for the people and the community around me. For example, I have relatives who are paying 60, 70, 80 lakhs. Who are earning a few crores and probably a couple of crores, and they're paying 30, 40, 50 lakhs in the actual tax amount. Because I guess in India it's about 35% or 40%, whatever it is.
Yeah, the higher end, isn't it?
But
Yeah.
the roads outside their house are unkept. I mean, they're broken. There are people who are... There is whole corruption in the way the roads are made. I mean, the tax money that he is paying is much more than the salary of so many people. So obviously the best... So what the government can at least do is utilize that money properly so that not just my relative, but everybody around in that community, irrespective of how much they earn or pay taxes, have a better life. But that money doesn't go where it's supposed to. And the people who are running businesses, they have loopholes that they can go through to save on that tax money. People like me or my relatives who are working for someone, they end up paying so much money and they don't see the results. Whereas here, I can see those results. So I might be paying more taxes, but my daughter, so the whole medical bill during our pregnancy, it was nil. The only money that I paid for was the parking, and even that got reimbursed because I also had a private insurance, right? I have never paid for any kind of medical expense here. So these are the public education here. The public education is awesome. Like, you can have good public education for free in this country. Whereas in India, nobody, I mean, not even the politicians who are governing everything are actually sending their kids to public schools and public colleges. So these are the aspects that you have to, like, I thought practically about. And I generally am not a very emotional person. So the whole thing is, yes, India is the country of my birth. India is the country that I love. It is the country that would always be extremely important for me. But for that importance to be there in my life, I need not really be the citizen of the country. That's my thought process. And I'm pretty sure if this video actually goes on and has people watching it, there will be this whole lot of people who would start commenting like, how can you talk like that? The country is off of birth. It's good that you left. But I'm just being practical. It's how it is.
I mean, this is a platform, as much as we're sharing our experiences to help other people, it is your own opinion as well at the end of the day, isn't it? And
Exactly.
Nobody can manufacture opinions at the end of the day. So It is your opinion. It is what it is. You did speak about salaries, Jijo. I think that will be quite a very popular topic, especially for people who are listening from back home in India. You said the salaries in the UK could be as high as US could be as high as 10 times of what they are in India. But there is the thing about purchasing power parity as well that comes in, isn't it? So I think people would like to know a little bit more about how that works out in terms of what you have at the end of the month rather than what you have at the beginning of the month.
Yeah, let me give an example. Let's talk about housing, right? Back when I first reached US, I was living in one of the smallest states in US called Rhode Island.
Mm-hmm.
And there my salary was in the range of late 60s.
Okay.
Because it was a tier 3 or tier 2 or tier 3 city, so the salaries were not that high.
How many years of experience did you have at that point?
5 years of experience in India, and I was it was my first deputation in US.
Okay. So it was like internal transfer.
Yes, I got a transfer from my Indian organization to the US organization. So I was getting about late 60K, so towards 67, 68 or something. And the house that and the unit that I was living in, the price of that unit was, I asked the owner, because obviously I was renting, it was 95K. So my 2-year salary, I mean, if I save everything, I can buy a unit in the city that I was living in, right? Now, compare that to India. In India, my starting salary was, or at the time that I left India, it was about 5 lakhs, I believe, and that was the average what everybody in my field was earning. And in India, what's the cost of a unit? I mean, it runs to 80, 90 lakhs, right?
Yeah, so, I mean, at least back in the day, it would have been at least 50 lakhs.
At least 50 lakhs, so 10 times.
Yeah.
So here, I have to save for 2 years and I can afford a unit, a 2-bedroom unit. Whereas in India, if I have to get a 2 or 3-bedroom unit, it will be 10 times my salary.
Yeah.
Right? So that purchase power parity, I mean, in US, I was living very luxuriously. And we still had enough saving at the end of the day. Now, obviously, US has this bad rep of people filing for bankruptcy and all. I think the advantage that we Desis have coming from the Indian subcontinent area is we are not ones who just spend. We actually earn and save.
Yeah.
So I think that advantage really helps us in figuring out the finances. How about you? How was it in UK for you? Pretty much the same or very different?
Like I said, I took several pit stops before I actually landed up in the UK. So when I left India, that was 2007. And around that time, I was around 3.6 lakhs per annum-ish, I think, in India. Which I knew for my qualifications and experience was fairly low, because I had already completed my PhD there and I was probably one of the specialists in the area that I was working in. But
that was the year?
That was 2007.
What year?
2007. Yeah. And the culture always with most corporates is if you don't ask, you don't get, really, isn't it? So the day I handed in my notice, my salary doubled from 30 to 60,000. But I showed the offer that I had from the Middle East, which was close to $3,000. Yeah, you can do the math, but yeah, it was $3,000, and they could no way come close to matching it, even from a purchasing power parity point of view. And one of the good things that we had going to the Middle East as our first step of the international journey was it was completely tax-free. It wasn't an easy move. It was a well-considered move. I had friends already there, so I asked them a lot of questions. I bored them to death about various aspects of living and everything else, before which we actually made the choice. But then after we moved there, we felt really comfortable. And like you say, we felt the kind of value that was provided to the offering that we provide to the organization. So I think that was there. Unfortunately, the global downturn happened in 2008. and 2009. So we had to come back home for a brief period. And then I had an offer again from Qatar in 2010 because Qatar was just awarded the rights to host the FIFA World Cup 2022, Football World Cup. And they were in a massive spree of infrastructure development. So I got to go back to Qatar from a stage where there was absolute bare bones infrastructure and to develop it to a stage where they were almost ready for the FIFA 2022. I think that was a fantastic journey for us. In terms of money, again, it was tax-free. So obviously a lot more than what you would have earned in India. But I think the experience was really worth moving to a place which at that point wasn't very popular in terms of expat living for Indians. And then when I was in Qatar, then I got offered a job in the UK. And I had to take a significant pay cut coming to the UK. But that was a decision that was, again, made from a family perspective, family in mind. And you speak about the things such as education, healthcare, everything else. And I think things in the UK at that point seemed to be a lot better than what it was in Qatar for a family, and especially to bring up a young family. So which is why we came to the UK back in 2016. So we've been here for about 7.5 years, 8 years now.
So how was the experience in Qatar? So you know how back in the Indian subcontinent, there's this whole idea is the Middle East is very regressive. You don't have as much freedom as some local would have. Was that an experience that you had, or was it different from what's being stated in the country?
I mean, from my perspective, I think this is a very good question. And how do you define freedom? It's personal freedom, isn't it? So as Indians, we are already quite conservative when it comes to how we behave in public, etc. So there is no real instances of public displays of affection. We don't drink in public. And those are the things which are absolutely frowned upon. In fact, in some places, it's even illegal. So as long as you maintain your sensibilities around you and also adapt to the sensibilities of the land that you're living in, you have absolutely no problem. So we've lived in the Middle East for almost 7 to 8 years, and we didn't have a single problem in the Middle East.
And how are people in general?
It's a melting pot, right? So there are people from different parts of the world. So the colleagues were from India, from other Asian countries. There were from a lot of them from Philippines. There were quite a few Westerners as well, because Westerners get paid insane amounts of money in the Middle East. I think that's the weight of the passport that they bring. So if at all there was any discrimination, I said the discrimination probably would have been in the salaries, because the salaries were sort of governed by the color of the passport you hold.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so there were different tiers of salaries. So there are certain Western countries which will be among the top tier of salaries. Some other Western countries which will be slightly below them. And then there would be the Asian countries, the other African countries, etc. So there were definitely a tiered system when it came to setting salaries. And this is
so you're
something
saying...
Yeah, go on.
So you're saying that two people doing the exact same job in the exact same company, but from a different country, would have different salaries?
Absolutely. That was the truth, at least until 2016 when I left the Middle East.
Wow. That's very different from my experience.
And that was one of the main motivations that I wanted to get out of the Middle East, because I was doing work almost on par or even above some of the people who are reporting to me. And the people who are reporting to me had higher salaries just because of the color of the passport.
Yeah, that's a new thing for me. I mean, I'm pretty sure the viewers who are actually listening or watching, that would be a different perspective. Because from my experience, it was, if you're doing the same job, there might be a difference, but it wouldn't be too much. The only scenario that the salaries would be different is if you're working for a vendor and then there is a client manager who's being paid by the client company would probably be earning much more than an employee of the vendor, because that's the whole reason that they have brought in a vendor, because they want to pay lower prices, like lower
Sure.
wages. But somebody who is, for example, a person from a different country working for my company, doing the same job as I am, would more or less have similar salaries. At least, uh, at least there won't be any obvious differences. Now,
Mhm.
if there are in the back end, I mean, there could be politics involved there, but you cannot officially have a different salary. That would be a big no-no. Yeah, that's different. And then, how is it different in UK? How has your experience in UK been?
Well, it's been a mixed bag, obviously, because when we first came in, there was massive expenses that we did not initially uh, budget for. So the
Hmm.
first massive hit was we were not given any company accommodation when we arrived here in the UK. So we had to fend for
Okay.
ourselves for about 3 to 4 weeks. And we came to a place called Nottingham in UK, which
Hmm.
is again not the most popular place for Indians to descend on or for any other expatriates to descend on. So it is a mainly white city, although there are two world class universities here, but that puts them in a completely different demographic, isn't it? So
Hmm.
having said that, the contacts that I had in the UK were either in London, in Birmingham, or in Manchester. So obviously, I did not have the opportunity. I wouldn't have, but I did not have the opportunity of picking somebody's brains as to what exactly is the right thing to do in Nottingham. So we stayed in a hotel for about 3.5 weeks when we first arrived, which
Hmm.
almost eroded a lot of my savings that I had from Qatar. And then
Hmm.
we had to rent a house, and there were lots of other initial expenses that we had underestimated, so to speak. But having said that, the last 8 years have been really good. So I've grown steadily in my career, and the growth has
Hmm.
been proportionate to what my expectations were. And
Hmm.
and now I'm in a fairly senior position in my organization, and I don't think I would have reached this senior position had I stayed on in Qatar or in anywhere else in the Middle East. The reason being that I'd almost hit the glass ceiling at the time I'd left Qatar, because all positions above me were reserved for either Westerners or for locals.
Yeah, you often think that in most countries it would be based on your skills, but the color of your passport and your country of origin does play kind of a big role. It, as you can, um, as per your discussion about Middle East, because I think that's kind of different in the Western countries. Because if you think about it, all the US biggest companies have an Indian at top,
Mhm.
which is kind of interesting considering it's so different in Middle East. Although, as you said, in Middle East you were being paid much more, but the actual vertical growth was really less. So opportunities are restricted.
Yeah,
Whereas the West, it's way better. And I guess even in India, it's getting better slowly because I know there is a nepotism factor, but people are getting more opportunities, having their own startups, and that growth is a factor. But like I said, it's been about 10 years since I've actually worked for long in that ecosystem. So probably some of our viewers from India can drop in a comment and tell us how it actually is now.
it depends on your mindset as well, isn't it? I mean, India is a massive country, 1.4 billion people, so there's bound to be more problems in India which you can solve. So if you have an entrepreneurial mindset, and
Hmm.
if opening and running a business is as easy as it seems in India, then yeah, obviously there will be lots of opportunities for us to be an entrepreneur in India. But
Yeah.
I can't, I can't sell. I think that's one of my weak points. So I
Hmm.
think of myself as very good solution provider, so solution developer. But I cannot
Hmm.
go and proactively sell my solutions to people in order for people to buy it,
Yeah.
because there might
Yeah.
be problems that people unknowingly may be facing, which I might have the solution for, but I will not go proactively and sell my solutions to them, which is why I've sort of chosen the route of working for an organization which sells on my behalf, and they pay me
Hmm.
for my time, which obviously in the financial world, it's always almost always understood that you cannot be rich when you are in a professional position. You can be
Hmm.
fairly well-to-do and a good, comfortable position, but you can never be rich or you can never be wealthy. The real wealth is created when you become an entrepreneur and you have people working for you and you sell your ideas out to the world.
No, I agree. I guess it's also got a lot to do with our Indian background, because even in India, at least from the generation that we are coming from, it was a stable job, a, an engineer or an IT guy that parents used to push for. That yeah, you can actually work hard, become an engineer, or become a scientist, or become a doctor, and then you can have a stable life. Whereas I think the whole one thing that we are often not told is how important marketing and selling is.
Yeah.
And but it was never something that we were inherently told about, that yes, you should know how to market yourself, you should know how to crunch the numbers, you should know how to sell stuff. That was, frankly, back in our days, at least when I was in 10th, 11th, 12th standards. In ninth, it used to be like you have to take science, and then you have to become a doctor or an engineer.
Yeah.
Anybody who's less than that used to be considered, yeah, probably they don't study too hard. I mean, whereas if you actually come to think of it, the engineers and the doctors work for people who took commerce and understood setting up a business, setting up marketing, and setting up this whole the entrepreneurial ecosystem that
Yeah.
the world runs on.
That's the thing,
But
isn't it?
yeah.
You don't need to have your own ideas. You can sell other people's ideas as well, as long as you're good at selling.
Yeah, and yeah, that's so true. And it's amazing how some of the top IT company leaders in US are Indians. So I'm pretty sure they have learned both things simultaneously and taken themselves forward to reach the point that they are in right now. But yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's interesting. Any leaving thoughts before we close for today? Okay. Now, you did say you didn't have too much of an emotional roller coaster when you chose a passport, etc., isn't it? Now, the Cricket World Cup 20 is going on in the US and in the Caribbean. I'm not sure if you follow cricket, but
I do.
it's likely that India and Australia will clash in the Super 8s. Whom are you going to cheer for?
So this happened in the last World Cup, the actual one-day World Cup.
Yeah.
So we had India and Australia. So literally, I can actually say that may the better team win, because I'm going to party in either case. I mean, may the better team win. Whoever plays well, they win. But when you actually ask me in this sense, then probably I would have a slight inclination towards India winning. Because for the longest time, that's what I have cheered for.
Yeah.
And I'm coming from the generation who actually went through the whole Harbhajan Singh controversy during the Border Gavaskar Trophy. And we were told that, look, Australia has dominated us in cricket. We are the underdogs. And even to this day, we are kind of underdogs compared to Australia, because no matter how good we play, we mess up during the finals, right? So everybody likes an underdog. Everybody relates to an underdog. So maybe that is also a factor where I would kind of cheer for India. But yeah, last World Cup, it was a prime example. That's true. I was like, may the better team win, and India as usual messed up, and we lost the World Cup. See, if you notice, I said we lost the World Cup. So there is still an Indian thing in me somewhere. So I guess it's got to do with something that I've always been, something that I've brought up as cheered for all my life, and that Indianness would not really ever go away. But yeah, that's how it's going to be in this World Cup too. How about you, England or India?
I mean, India, definitely, because I've lived a lot longer in India. I've followed the cricket in India, and I sort of understand the process in India a lot more than I do here, although I do play for my local clubs here. But yeah, definitely India when it comes to India versus England, no doubt about it. And I go with my mates, with my English mates, to the pub to watch the cricket, and still cheer for India. That's absolutely fine, no problem at all.
So how's the experience like being with friends who are English, and you're the guy who's also now an England citizen.
I mean, it's
Still
fairly
cheering.
relaxed. It's fairly relaxed. I mean,
Yeah.
people sort of know where their loyalties lie as far as sport is concerned. And English Premier League is large. It's huge here, isn't it? And a person who's supporting a Manchester City or a Manchester United doesn't have to be from Manchester. They can be from elsewhere as well.
Yeah.
It does happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as far as
Makes sense.
loyalties in sports are concerned, it's completely different. I think the oath we have taken is to remain loyal to the country that we are in. And we'll always do that. I mean, we're not going to do anything unscrupulous.
Awesome. So, any parting words from your end before we close this podcast?
Nothing really. I think if the people who've managed to watch this enjoy the content, feel free to drop some messages or questions to us so that it will prompt us for further conversations. Otherwise, we're going to be rambling on and on about what we've done over the last 15 or 20 years of our lives. Mind you, that's going to be quite interesting as well. But we'd rather offer more value to you in terms of answering your questions rather than us just sharing experiences for the sake of sharing experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, there's not much I can add to what you've already said, but like we discussed, we are going to discuss about life as a parent in India, with life as a parent in Australia or UK, with a kid who's born here, and then our experiences, actual work experience in the work that we do, the community that we are living in right now. The whole discussions on how many people think that so many people are leaving India, what their experiences are. Those are the experiences that we're going to share with people. So hopefully we have enough people who are listening in and drop in comments, ask their questions, and make this whole global Desi thing on the internet. So thanks a lot, Vivian, for joining me, co-hosting this podcast. Hopefully we would have more audience questions next time and we can actually answer those.
Yeah, thanks,
Great.
Jijo.
Thanks
Thanks
a
for
lot.
setting this up. Cheers then.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.